Rain hammered the cobblestone streets, each drop a cold needle on Alara's skin. She didn't stop running. Not for the wind that bit through her torn coat, not for the voices echoing behind her. Her boots splashed through puddles, carrying her deeper into the forgotten part of the city, where the buildings leaned like tired old men and the street lamps flickered in protest against the dark. She glanced over her shoulder. No one. Just the wet silence of empty alleys. But her heart still pounded like she was being chased. That's when she saw it. A door. Not an ordinary door. This one stood alone, in the rain, framed by nothing but brick. No shop, no sign, no window, just an archway of old stone. A heavy oak door at its center, and a brass handle that glinted as if it had been polished minutes ago. Something in her chest tugged her forward. Her hand trembled as she touched the handle. The door swung open without a sound. Warm, golden light spilled out, carrying the smell of old paper and candle wax. Inside stretched a vast hall of books, shelves upon shelves vanishing into the shadows above, ladders reaching toward an unseen ceiling. The air was still, as if the place had been holding its breath for centuries. She stepped inside, her wet boots squeaking on the polished floor. The moment she crossed the threshold, the door shut behind her with a click that sounded too final. And then, from between the aisles, came a voice. "You shouldn't be here." Alara spun around. An old man in a long, ink-stained coat stepped forward, his silver hair glowing in the candlelight. His eyes were sharp, unsettling, as if he'd read every thought in her head the moment she walked in. "This," he said, sweeping a hand across the towering shelves, "is not a place for wanderers. Every book here is a door." "A door?" she asked. His gaze darkened. "Some lead to wonders, some to horrors. But there is one you must never open." Alara's voice was barely a whisper. "Which one?" The librarian's eyes flicked upward to a balcony high above them. "The red book," he said. "If you value your life, child, leave it closed." The librarian's warning lingered in Alara's mind like a shadow she couldn't shake. He moved past her without another word, his long coat sweeping the floor, and vanished between the shelves. For a moment, she considered leaving, but something about this place pulled at her. She wandered down the first aisle, running her fingers along the spines. The books were strange, some bound in leather that felt like tree bark, others stitched together with silver thread. Many had titles in languages she didn't recognize, the letters curling like vines or gleaming like molten metal. A faint hum filled the air, low and constant, as if the library itself were alive. She stopped at a book the size of her hand. It was covered in scales. Yes, actual scales, warm to the touch. The moment her fingers brushed it, the air shimmered, and she saw something impossible. A desert stretching under 3 suns, a river of glass winding through it, and a city built on the back of a colossal beast. She blinked and it was gone. Her breath quickened. The librarian hadn't been lying. These books were doors. Deeper she went, her footsteps soft on the carpet. The light dimmed in the far aisles, candles replaced by glowing orbs that floated lazily above the shelves. Then she heard it. A whisper. It was so faint she thought it might have been the wind. But there was no wind here. She tilted her head, listening.
The voice, if it was a voice, was coming from somewhere above. Her eyes lifted to the balconies high overhead, where narrow walkways wound between the upper shelves. There, barely visible in the gloom, she saw it. A thin line of red. It was the color of fresh blood, glowing faintly in the shadows. A book, sitting alone on a pedestal. She remembered the librarian's voice. "If you value your life, leave it closed." But the whisper was calling again now, clearer, curling through her mind like smoke. "Elara." She froze. The voice had spoken her name.
The whisper still clung to her name when she spotted the nearest spiral staircase. Its iron steps wound upward into the gloom, each one groaning softly under her weight. The higher she climbed, the quieter the library became, until even her breathing felt too loud. Halfway up, the air grew colder. A faint frost clung to the railing, glittering in the dim light, and the glow from the lower floors seemed to retreat, as though the library itself didn't want to illuminate what lay above. When she reached the balcony, the silence was absolute. The shelves here were older, warped wood, frayed bindings, paper that looked brittle enough to turn to dust at a touch. Cobwebs hung in the corners, and the faint hum she'd heard downstairs was gone. At the far end of the walkway, it waited. The red book. It wasn't just red. It pulsed, as though a heartbeat throbbed beneath its cover. Its surface looked wet, like fresh ink, or something darker. It rested on a black pedestal, the only object in the aisle. "Elara." The voice was in her ear now, warm and coaxing. She took a step closer, and the shadows shifted. Shapes slithered at the edges of her vision, disappearing when she turned her head. The air thickened, heavy with a scent she couldn't place, until she realized it smelled like rain on the street where she had been just minutes ago. The book's whisper grew faster, layered with other voices, laughing, crying, begging. She thought she heard her mother's voice, the one she hadn't heard since she ran away. Her hand trembled. She wasn't touching it. Not yet. And then, a hand shot out of the darkness beside the pedestal, gripping her wrist with ice-cold fingers. She gasped, and the librarian's face emerged from the shadows, his eyes blazing with urgency. "Not this one. If you open it, you won't come back." But the book pulsed harder now, the heartbeat echoing in her own chest. And for the first time, she wondered if she even wanted to go back. The librarian's grip was unyielding, his knuckles white as he held her back. "Elara," he said, voice sharp now, "listen to me." But the book pulsed again. The whisper became a roar inside her mind, drowning out his words. She could see images now, not in the air, but behind her eyes. A sun that bled into the ocean, a city of glass suspended over a black abyss, a younger version of herself laughing in a place she didn't remember. Her free hand moved on its own. The moment her fingers brushed the cover, a shockwave rippled through the balcony, dust cascading from the shelves like falling snow. The librarian staggered back as if something had shoved him. "Elara, stop!" But she had already pulled it open. The first page glowed, the ink shifting like liquid metal, rearranging into words she somehow understood. "All worlds are bound. To open one is to unbind them all." A sound split the air, a deep, resonant crack, as if the librarian's spine itself had broken.
The shelves trembled, books began to rattle free, tumbling open midair, and from their pages spilled light, shadow, and things that did not belong in this world. She spun around. Down below, the calm golden hall was gone. Now the aisles twisted into endless corridors leading into skies of fire, forests with silver leaves, oceans that hung upside down. Each second they shifted, folding over each other like torn paper. And the librarian? He was no longer just a man. His outline rippled, splitting into 3 versions of himself, each standing in a slightly different place, each staring at her with the same furious fear. "You've broken the binding," all 3 voices said at once. "You've called them here." Before Alara could ask who they were, something stepped out from between the pages. Tall, faceless, and dripping with black ink that sizzled when it hit the floor. It turned its head toward her, though it had no eyes. "Lara," it said in the same whisper that had lured her here. And then it stepped forward.
The thing made of ink moved like spilled shadow, each step stretching unnaturally far. Its faceless head tilted as it spoke again, her name curling in the air like smoke she could almost touch. The librarian, or rather the 3 versions of him, lurched toward her. "Don't let it touch you," they shouted in unison, their voices overlapping into something that made her ears ache. Alara backed away, but the balcony behind her had warped into something impossible, a narrow plank over a chasm filled with floating pages, each one flashing scenes of alien worlds. The air was sharp with the smell of burned paper. "Take this," one of the librarians thrust a thin, black volume into her hands. Its cover was blank, its pages pure white. "What is it?" she stammered. "A clean page," the second librarian said. "It will take you somewhere safe. Probably." "Probably?" The ink creature lunged. The third librarian shouted, "Now!" Without thinking, Alara flipped the blank book open. The page exploded with light, not golden, not warm, but searing white that swallowed the balcony, the shelves, the air itself. She felt herself falling. Her boots hit solid ground. The light faded. She was standing in a vast meadow under a lavender sky, the grass whispering in a breeze that smelled faintly of sugar. Strange creatures, deer with wings, foxes with crystal antlers, paused to watch her, their eyes reflecting the same glow as the book in her hand. She turned. Behind her, where she expected the library door to be, there was only empty air. The book in her hand had gone cold, and the page that had saved her was now filled with writing she didn't remember putting there. "They will follow. Run!" A shadow passed over the meadow. She looked up and froze. Through the lavender clouds, a shape blotted out the twin suns, a shape made of dripping black ink. It had found her. The lavender meadow swayed gently, as if unaware of the shadow crawling across it. But Alara's pulse thundered in her ears. The ink creature descended slowly, its dripping form trailing streams of black that dissolved into the grass with a hiss. Every time a drop touched the ground, the plants shriveled into ash. She ran. The grass whispered around her legs, the wind turning sharp, almost cutting. She sprinted toward the far edge of the meadow, where jagged crystal spires pierced the sky like frozen lightning. Something moved beside her. At first, she thought it was another strange animal, but then it kept pace with her, weaving between the tall grass. A figure burst into view. Tall, cloaked in fabric the color of midnight, a curved blade strapped to their back. Their face was hidden by a smooth bronze mask, etched with swirling patterns. "Keep moving," the masked stranger called, their voice muffled but urgent. Alara didn't argue.
They ran together, the spires looming closer. Behind them, the ink creature gave a sound like tearing cloth, and the ground erupted in black tendrils that lashed forward, swallowing the meadow in widening circles. This way. The stranger veered sharply toward a narrow cleft between two crystal spires. Alara followed, squeezing through the gap just as the black tendrils slithered past. Inside, the spires formed a hidden cavern, glowing with soft blue light from crystals embedded in the walls. The stranger pressed a hand against the entrance, and the crystal walls shifted, closing the gap like melting glass. The air inside was cool, still, safe. For now. Alara collapsed onto the smooth stone floor, chest heaving. What was that thing? The stranger crouched in front of her. A binder's shade. It hunts those who break the seals. The seals? She asked. The mask tilted slightly. You opened something, didn't you? Alara hesitated. The red book. The stranger went still for a long moment. Then they stood, turning away. You've done more than open a door. You've started the unbinding. And if the shade is here, it means the library itself is bleeding into every world. They turned back to her, eyes glittering faintly through the mask's narrow slits. If you want to survive and undo this, you'll need to find the other 3 books before the shade does. Alara swallowed hard. Other books? The stranger nodded. The green, the black, and the white. Together, they can bind the worlds again. And if I don't? The masked figure glanced toward the sealed entrance. Then all worlds will become one, and none will survive it.
The masked stranger's name was Kale. They didn't offer it at first. It slipped out hours later, when the two of them were already deep in the crystal caverns, their footsteps echoing in the hollow blue light. Kale moved like someone who'd traveled between worlds before. Their every step was deliberate, their head tilting often, as if listening to something Alara couldn't hear. The first book, Kale said at last, is in the forest that remembers. It doesn't like strangers. Alara frowned. What does that even mean? It will know you, before you know yourself. When they emerged from the caverns, the landscape had changed again. The lavender sky was gone, replaced by a pale gold dusk. Ahead stretched a forest of towering trees, their trunks pale as bone, their leaves a deep, shimmering green that seemed to ripple without wind. The moment they stepped between the first 2 trees, the air shifted. The forest watched. It was subtle at first, branches angling slightly toward them, shadows leaning in unnatural directions. But the deeper they went, the more Alara felt the weight of countless unseen eyes pressing against her back. She tried not to look over her shoulder. Don't answer if it speaks to you, Kale murmured without turning around. What if what speaks to me? But then she heard it, a voice, low and smooth, threading through the leaves like a sigh. Alara. She froze. It wasn't the same whisper from the red book. This one was warmer, gentler, familiar. Alara, it's me. It's safe now. You can stop running. Her breath caught in her throat. She knew that voice. It was her brother's. Kale glanced back sharply. Don't answer. Her throat ached with unspoken words. They pushed on, deeper into the twisting maze of trees, but something was wrong. The path they'd been following forked, and when Alara looked back, the way they'd come was gone, replaced by more trees, endless and identical. Kale stopped, scanning the shadows. It's already shifting. The forest spoke again, closer now. Alara, come home. This time, it wasn't her brother's voice. It was her own. The voice that was hers, perfectly hers, echoed between the pale trunks. It was wrong. It was impossible. "Ilara," it said again, sweet, coaxing. "You don't need to run. You could stay here. Forever." The air thickened with the scent of rain-soaked paper, the same scent from the library. Her boots sank deeper into the moss with each step, the ground softening like it wanted to hold her in place. Kale's hand gripped her arm, steady and grounding. "Don't look, don't listen," they murmured. But she was listening, and the forest knew it. Through the shifting leaves ahead, a light flickered, green, deep and alive. It wasn't like candlelight. It pulsed like a heartbeat. "The book," Kale breathed. They pushed forward, but the forest moved against them. Branches twisted down like hands, blocking their path. Roots curled up from the soil, ensnaring their feet. The voices multiplied. Her mother's, her father's, her brother's, her own, all calling her name, promising warmth, safety, love. Kale drew his curved blade and slashed through the branches, the steel sparking green light where it cut. "Keep your eyes on the glow," he ordered. Alara's breath came fast. Every step toward the light felt heavier, like she was walking through water. She forced her gaze upward, past the grasping shadows, past the whispers, to the pedestal at the forest's center. The green book. Its cover shimmered with patterns that shifted like leaves in sunlight, its edges glowing faintly. They reached the pedestal together. Kale stood guard, blade ready. "Take it," he said. Alara reached out. The moment her fingers touched the book, the voices stopped. Every branch, every root froze in place. The air stilled, heavy with silence. Then, the forest sighed. The trees leaned back, the path opening in a perfect line to the horizon. The glow from the book spread across the moss, cleansing it of shadows. She looked at Kale. "What happens now?" Kale sheathed the blade. "Now we find the other two." Alara glanced down at the green book in her hands. On its cover, faint new lettering had appeared, as if written just for her. 1 bound, 2 to go. But somewhere far above the golden sky, a shadow stirred, a shape made of dripping black ink. It had found the path to this world, and it was coming.